Have you ever seen a brand new monster truck towering over you on the highway that costs more than a house? That gleaming machine packed with chrome and leather probably has a monthly payment that would make your mortgage broker weep. But here is the real twist. The person driving that $70,000 asset probably makes less money than you do. Regular people are somehow pulling off these mathematical impossibilities, and I'm going to show you exactly how. Welcome back to the CEO of Wealth, where we install logical systems to protect your hard-earned capital. Today, we are exposing the complex corporate web designed to keep you trapped in a perpetual debt loop. If you are confused how your neighbor is funding a massive luxury truck while quietly panicking over groceries, subscribe right now. Corporate dealers have locked down a system that extracts your savings before you can even invest it. Most consumers are operating on high-risk software patches instead of geometric wealth-building operating systems. They trade private, long-term financial freedom for brief, loud, dopamine hits that vanish immediately. True wealth growth requires severe efficiency in your capital retention score, not a showpiece liability in the driveway. Instead, the masses are running a deficit cycle inside a matrix designed purely for wealth destruction. They remain locked out of high-velocity investments because their daily living overhead is totally bloated. Time compounds aggressively against you when your cash flow is locked in a negative pattern. It is time to terminate the leaks, reboot your entire operational strategy, and win starting right now. Let's start with systemic distortion tool number 1, the predatory extended car loan. Remember when car loans were tight, logical 3 or 4 year contracts? Those days are dead. Today's loans routinely stretch 7, 8, or even 9 years into the future. Stretch a $60,000 liability over 96 months, and the monthly price tag suddenly looks comfortable. Consumers focus purely on that small monthly number, completely blind to the mathematical disaster they are signing. If you spread the loan, you aren't saving capital. You are multiplying the total interest penalty to the banking complex. A $900 payment over 8 years converts a $60,000 asset into an $86,000 drain. You pay interest on a rolling, decaying metal asset long after its primary utility value has evaporated. By letting a previous buyer take the initial geometric depreciation hit, you protect your primary cash blocks. An average car payment destroys more generational wealth potential than almost any other consumer error. Let's expose the second corporate trap, the total illusion of 0% APR financing. Every lot features flashing signs offering free corporate money to qualified buyers. Here is the data patch. 0% financing is never actually free. The interest penalty is pre-baked directly into the inflated price tag. Qualification standards for these clean terms are reserved purely for the high net worth individual matrix. The individuals who actually qualify possess the cash to execute the purchase outright with no debt. For the average worker, the real interest marker on an extended term is a financial nightmare. This forces consumers into the high-risk trade-in game, which is an absolute geometric hamster wheel. A fatigued buyer with negative equity trades their car for a new one, rolling the debt forward into a new matrix. Their structural debt expands continuously while their liquid capital gets ground down to zero. Dealers love this loop because it constructs a highly predictable, captive consumer customer for life. But the most terrifying aspect of the matrix is how society has normalized this wealth self-destruction. Zuckers execute massive geometric deficit spend loops on vehicles they would never dream of in other categories. If your peer spent $1,200 a month on premium coffee, you would stage an intervention. If they dropped that allocation on luxury fashion lines every month, you would diagnose it as a severe addiction loop. But tie $1,200 to an oversized depreciating machine, and society calls it reliable transportation. Decades of weaponized marketing have brainwashed you into believing a vehicle is your human identity. Your truck is no longer utility. It is a loud projection of your perceived social power grid. It signals that you are successful and hardening, even if your actual bank account is totally empty. Corporate marketers don't sell specs. They sell artificial security, status, and lifestyle fantasies. That commercial showing a truck conquering savage terrain is targeted algorithmic dopamine programming. It sells you an identity patch that you are an elite explorer, even if your job is purely digital. This high-level emotional matrix bypasses your logical brain entirely and triggers an irrational signature. When you prioritize a manufactured identity over liquid capital, a massive deficit feels like a self-investment. Since the math doesn't compute, consumers execute high-risk re-engineering on their household budgets. They subordinate their entire operational ecosystem to protect a single depreciating car payment. Normal workers downscale their real estate shield or isolate themselves socially to keep the truck key. They eat low-tier instant noodles for dinner while operating a vehicle that costs more than a mortgage down payment. They skip medical checkups, delete vacations, and isolate themselves from investments to fund a liability loop. Some operators execute exhausting second shifts simply to subsidize their transportation overhead matrix. They spend weekends burning out their expensive truck to generate cash just to pay for that exact truck. It is a modern form of self-inflicted indentured servitude where the rolling asset becomes the total master. But the multi-payment architecture within a single-family ecosystem is the most savage recursive loop. It is normal to find 2 or 3 massive vehicle loans running simultaneously inside a single household matrix. The combined automotive allocation of one family unit exceeds the total geometric cost of their shelter. They manage multiple depreciation schedules, premium insurance protocols, and interest parameters. They measure success by their capacity to keep a chaotic chain of minimum payments from collapsing. Zuckers completely lose sight of the objective, which is the accumulation of income-producing assets. This creates automotive Stockholm syndrome. They fall in love with the exact financial matrix, destroying their future. True wealth growth must execute a clean, unbranded utilitarian protocol. Look past the display matrix. The sales machinery keeps your logical prefrontal cortex offline using instant gratification protocols. They stretch the timeline to 84 months to artificially shrink the terrifying geometric price tag. Corporate counterscripts account for every logical objection using high-level psychological loops. Nervous about reliability? They finance a high-margin extended warranty directly into your long-term debt. Worried about the extreme payment size? They will expand the matrix timeline to 96 months to hide it. The mystery of how people afford massive vehicle layouts has officially been decoded. They aren't affording them in any legitimate financial sense. They are mortgaging their future for a temporary showpiece. Next time you spot a massive luxury truck, remember the driver may be eating cereal for dinner. Suddenly, that reliable used vehicle parked inside your driveway looks like the ultimate wealth flexibility play. The masses will keep funding corporate profit bases while you step out of the trap entirely. The choice is binary. Look wealthy or be wealthy. One leads to a geometric deficit loop. One leads to liberation. Install the CEO of Wealth operating system. Protect your capital, build the system, and win. Modern trucks are highly complex machines, and a single brake overhaul or repair invoice will cost you over $1,200 instantly. When a critical subsystem fails out of warranty, a severe maintenance bill will immediately fracture a fragile budget sheet. A transmission or electronic failure deletes thousands of dollars of capital, while major engine block issues can cost 10 grand. The volatile fuel grid means filling up an oversized tank operates like a massive rolling monthly penalty on your wallet. Let's execute a real financial planning audit and look at the whiteboard containing the raw numbers that dealers hide. Imagine purchasing a $55,000 truck via a standard long-term contract at a 6% interest marker. When you run the real math, you discover that you are throwing over $130,000 directly into a financial furnace. At the absolute end of that 7-year timeline, you are left holding a worn-out machine worth a fraction of its original value. You deployed your primary wealth power to retain a tiny chest of terminal value, while your capital was ground down to zero. The absolute tragedy is what that identical cash allocation could have engineered if it was invested in a rising index fund graph instead. If that money compounded steadily, you would possess an ironclad shield of liquid wealth rather than a cage of iron bars. But once an individual takes the bait, their logical prefrontal cortex goes completely offline, and they refuse to look at charts. They develop automotive Stockholm syndrome, falling in love with the exact billboard fantasy that is actively destroying their future. Suddenly, that debt-free, highly reliable used sedan parked inside your driveway looks like the ultimate strategy for freedom. The sales machinery is highly sophisticated, using a robotic sales funnel to bypass your natural defensive risk parameters. They magnify the comfort of the monthly payment slot on the contract page to make you sign the dotted line immediately. They gladly finance high-margin extended warranties and hidden lifestyle loops directly into your long-term debt structure. The mystery of how normal people afford massive vehicle layouts has officially been decoded and walked out into the light. They aren't affording them in any legitimate financial sense. They are just unstable circus performers balancing on a rolling tire. The next time you spot an oversized luxury truck on the highway, remember the driver might be holding a folder labeled math. While the masses continue to fund corporate cash reserves, your financial fortress wall will stand completely independent of the hype. Declutter your life from these massive liabilities, draw a clean line, and channel your income streams into your asset engine. Break the algorithmic pattern, step out of the trap entirely, and choose true equity over material consumer vanity. Subscribe to CEO of Wealth. Protect your primary capital blocks, exit the consumer matrix, and hold your trophy of financial freedom.